I'm with the Hopkinton Trails Club, and I'm the one that sent out the email invitations to everyone come tonight. We are pleased to welcome Marjorie back to Hopkinton for her talk tonight about foliage in the New England area.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you, John, and thank you all for coming. I'm Marjorie Turner Hollman, and I am the author of Easy Walks in Massachusetts and More Easy Walks in Massachusetts. And today we're looking to find fantastic foliage around the corner from where you live. And my hope, my pretty strong confidence is that almost anywhere in New England at some time or another, depending on the timing, you will be able to find foliage. But sometimes if you're not looking in the right places, or you think you have a good idea and you find you've gone to a place, it's still green, or you go back and it isn't the right time. And there's some real basic things that would be helpful to know. And so I have a couple of just some basic suggestions that I'd like to talk to you about today, and we also can take questions afterwards. So the first thing that I encourage people to do is to learn some of the basic foliage plants. And what we're looking at here is a swamp maple. And those typically are, we have lots of maples. If you know the Toronto Maple Leafs, the hockey team, that's your maple pattern. And so we have lots of different varieties, but the swamp maples tend to grow around wet areas and the banks of rivers, streams, and they turn first, but they also fall off first. They make some beautiful, beautiful colors like this, but if you're going to see that kind of color, I encourage people, go to the rivers and streams and your local ponds first when you start seeing any hint of foliage, because that's where you're going to see some really nice foliage that's going to be gone quickly. I was in the Blackstone River Valley today, over in Woonsocket, Blackstone, Uxbridge, Hopedale direction, and there are some wonderful, wonderful spots of foliage along the river there. It was really lovely, and especially since we've just had some rain, the rivers are filling back up again. We've been very, very dry. So learn your plants. The maple is one of the basics. Oaks are another basic tree that we have a lot of in New England, and the oak leaves come in two varieties, red and white, just like wine. And the red have kind of pointy leaves, and the white have more rounded lobes. But there's still that basic oak shape. And the oaks get a tough reputation with foliage. People think, oh, these oak trees, they aren't very interesting. They just turn brown and they don't look like anything. I will show you a picture soon that will show you that that's not always true. A lot of people like to press foliage the fall. They like to save the fall colors and put them between heavy books. This is one of the plants that I would advise, even though it's very, very pretty and has lovely, lovely colors, please do not take this home. It is poison ivy. If you are going to spend much of any time out in the outdoors, it would do you well to learn what poison ivy is and what it would do to you. So don't take poison ivy home. Even I saw some gorgeous poison ivy today, multicolored poison ivy, just beautiful, stunning pictures. Take pictures, do not pick. Sassafras, people make sassafras tea. Sassafras is part of what we call the understory. As you're walking trails, you're not just going to have leaves up in the trees, you're also going to have bushes that are alongside you, and sassafras likes to grow in the understory along trees. We call it the mitten bush. You see on the left the mitten shape, and on the right is the three-pronged, I can't quite do that with my fingers there, with the shape. So it's part of the understory plant. It's one more. It's just when you learn the names of plants and trees, even just a very few basics, It's like learning a couple names of some birds. It's like learning and remembering a person's name. When you greet them by name, you just feel more comfortable and you say, oh yes, I know that. And you can say, oh yes, that's a maple. I'll go back and see those because they're changing. It helps you understand and keep track of what you've seen. And then this is along the Snet. This picture was taken over in Franklin. It's a proposed rail trail starting in Franklin, goes through Bellingham, Blackstone, Millville, Uxbridge, out to Douglas, Massachusetts, 22 miles. And you're going to see stone embankments, retaining walls, beautiful stone walls. And what you're looking at there is witch hazel. It's another understory plant that adds a lot of color right around when you're on a trail. It's just lovely. And it tends to be kind of gangly. It's never a real tree, it's a bush. And it's very skinny and gangly looking, and it just fills the understory with some lovely yellows. Every community in New England has local cemeteries. Especially the older ones have very mature trees. This is a cemetery. I spotted this sugar maple in full bloom in Mendon. And these older cemeteries, the mature trees, a lot of them, they planted sugar maples. And those I call the prima donna of the foliage season. They just, if Moses were a New Englander and were going to be spoken to by God, it would have been, the burning bush would have been a sugar maple in the fall. It would have had to be the fall. And so you're likely to see the sugar maples in the cemeteries. They also tend to have walking paths that are paved or at least gravel that are very easy to walk on. They lack parking is what I found. Cemeteries do not anticipate lots of crowds that come and stay for big events. They expect people to come and stay, but they don't worry about traffic. They also don't need any power lines. The people that stay in cemeteries don't need power. So there, you get some beautiful pictures without the power lines that are so often along roads spoil those beautiful pictures. So cemeteries are a great place to check out, but you know your local cemeteries much better than I ever will for what are the cemeteries and what are the rules if there are any particular cemeteries. Sometimes they say dawn to dusk for visitation. Some of them say don't bring your dogs. I don't know. There's so many, I couldn't even begin to tell you what's in your community. But the Trails Club, the Hopkinton Trails Club, have lots of people who are walkers. They could refer you if you have any question for what's the rules in your area or what a particularly lovely cemetery is in your town. Your town commons. Many, not all, but many of New England, that's part of what makes us very unique in that way, is have the town common system. And it provides a lot of times grassy areas, and again, mature trees, a lot of times pathways that are easy walking, but then they have, even when the leaves have fallen, they make beautiful pictures like this, the foliage on the grass. Even when the leaves have fallen, the season isn't done. You've still got some beautiful foliage. This was on the Bellingham Town Common where I live. And this is what it looked like. The leaves were starting to fall. And then when I looked at the fallen leaves, I said, oh, that's pretty too. You know, it's not just, here's one way of looking at foliage. And if we get so accustomed to, well, if it's not like the Yankee magazine spread with, let's see, there's that bridge over the little stream and the common with the beautiful white church and the rolling hill. I got it right there in my mind. And you know, there's so much more to foliage. And one of the things I ask people to do is to change your expectations of what is wonderful foliage. Instead of having this, well, it's not good enough, or we have to go up to New Hampshire to the Kankamankas highway and be stuck in traffic for 2 or 3 hours, bumper to bumper, with the rest of the world who has all decided to go to the White Mountains those 2 weekends that are good for foliage in New Hampshire. there's foliage all around us. And there is so much pleasure and so much thrill to be had much, much closer to home. And yes, go ahead and go to the White Mountains if you choose to, but understand that you can see so much right around where we live. And some of it is changing your expectations, but some of it is being a little more methodical about going places that you know right around where you live. Don't just look down at the grass, look up. This is in the middle of a beech grove. And we tend, when we take landscape pictures, to take pictures of places. And I don't even remember who suggested look up. And when I did, I realized it's almost like an abstract painting. It's just with the light coming through the leaves like that. We just have to look at things a little different, and you will be amazed at what you see. It's really an amazing place. This what I took over at a beech grove in Sharon, Massachusetts, at the Mass Audubon Sanctuary in Sharon, Moose Hill, Audubon. What I encourage people to do is, if you're on a walk in a trail and you spot a beech grove, remember where it is, so that when you're going out looking for foliage, you say, oh yeah, I know that trail had a really lovely beech grove. The beech trees, one more tree to learn, those are the ones with the real smooth gray bark that no one can resist carving their initials into. You know the beech trees. They grow in clumps. They sort of send out shoots to grow, so they tend to grow close together, and that gives you a nice gathering of beech leaves as well. This was late in the season. This was over in Foxborough behind Patriot Place, over by the stadium. And this is a working cranberry bog that is right behind Bass Pro Shop. There's a little half-mile loop trail, and you can walk right along this cranberry bog. In the summer, the leaves are green. And so all those cranberry leaves have changed with the foliage. But you notice it's very late in the season. All the other leaves, except for the oaks, have fallen. But the cranberry leaves still have their foliage very, very late. And so it's just another place to look for, understand that many, many plants provide foliage of varied different kinds. And you can walk all along the edge of this cranberry bog. In fact, should be very, very soon that they'll be doing a cranberry harvest. And it's a public event that they do and invite people. It's right off Route 1, and there's parking right to the side of the Patriot Place, and Bass Pro Shop has bathrooms at the very back of their store, right at the back near the trail. Very accessible for trail users. The ferns are another thing to look for. If they haven't all dried up, which an awful lot of them were when I was out on the trail this week, but if they haven't, they turn this lovely, lovely yellow. So not only do we want to look big and look up and look down, you also want to look small and look at the ferns and see. They will give you some lovely, lovely pictures. I took this over at Delcart Conservation Land in Franklin, and that's a nice loop trail around a pond. It's got a playground for kids, it's got a loop trail, and it's even got a floating bridge that makes the loop, which it's awfully fun to go and walk out on the pond on this little floating bridge and make a nice, about a mile loop trail, so it's a very easy walk. And you do want to make sure and wear closed-toed shoes. It's still a new trail system that hasn't been worn down that much, and so there is poison ivy in the area that you want to make sure you have your socks, your pants tucked into your socks. And the other thing I meant to mention with fall foliage is it's hunting time, not just fall foliage time. You see that this is blaze orange. I didn't ever used to go out in the woods because of hunters. I did not want to be in the woods at the same time. But then when I wanted to see foliage, I realized I was going to have to figure out how to coexist. Blaze orange is how you coexist with the possibility of hunters. Hunting is allowed on trustees of the reservation property. It is allowed on state forest property. It is allowed on Army Corps of Engineers. West Hill Dam over in Uxbridge has hunting. Even DCR properties like around Riverbend Farm in Uxbridge has hunting. So your solution, I have never actually seen a hunter when I've been out on the trails, but in the case you want to be as visible as possible. I also don't hike alone, and that means you're walking with someone and you're talking with them and you're making noise and you're scaring the wildlife away. You probably won't see a lot of wildlife on these walks if you're hiking with somebody else, but you also are probably not going to have any problems with hunters because they don't want to bother us hikers either. But blaze orange is your safety issue. $10 at Walmart, or an orange hat. A hat or a vest or a jacket. Either one will be very, very effective in making you visible. So that's the ferns. And this is over, speaking of West Hill Dam. Now, this really, because it's a flood control area, the dam is raised up quite a bit above the land, and it's got a big grassy area. We don't have a lot of what you're going to call views in this area. We have no 360 views, 360-degree balds like they do in western Massachusetts and up in New Hampshire. But we do have places that you can get what feel like a view, and there are a few places that do have views. This is one that it feels like you have a view. The dam gets you up above the rest of the area that's the floodplain, and West Hill has this nice dam. It's got lots of hiking trails, water. It's awfully nice to juxtapose the water and the leaves with the color. It just adds the blue sky, the water, the color. It just makes for a really sweet picture. And I could have rolled out in a wheelchair out to the dam out at West Hill Dam. It was very, very accessible. You don't have the rest of it is not particularly accessible, but I'm just saying you don't always have to scale a mountain to be able to get views. What we don't have in views, we have in easy walks. South Central Massachusetts has lots and lots of what I call easy walks. We don't have many views, but we do have some, and I'll talk about those in a few minutes. I told you I would show you what oak leaves can look like. Now this is over at Rice City Pond in Uxbridge, and it was a bright, bright day, and those bronze leaves there are oak trees. They're absolutely gorgeous in the right sunlight. And so understanding that bronze is a wonderful fall color, it's a great place. It's a great thing. Oaks are beautiful fall leaves, and they also stay on the tree sometimes all the way till spring. But in the fall, they do have that bronze, that beautiful, beautiful golden light. So don't get discouraged if you say, well, all we have is oaks, because they make some beautiful foliage as well. One of the things you want to do to get good foliage, we often want to have pictures so we can share. And I encourage people that if this is something you want to do, take your camera with you, especially right now with the foliage is really popping out, but start experimenting with your camera before foliage season. I took this picture about a month ago while it was still summer. That tree was actually all green. Does it look a little yellow up at the top to you? It was very early morning along the Sudbury River in Framingham, along the Carroll Getchell Trail at Danforth Street, and the light was hitting the tops of those trees just right. And I looked in my camera and said, oh my goodness, it's yellow. It's picking up the yellow. And so that is another one of the things I encourage people to do is experiment with your camera. I'm still learning how to get color to show right. I don't have a real fancy schmancy camera. The camera that I have, yes, I do have it. It's just a little, Samsung, not real fancy, and it took all of the pictures that we're looking at today. It could do probably a lot more than I know still, but experiment, try it. And then the other thing is I encourage people to walk at different times of the day, because morning light looks very different than full midday light, and then the afternoon light looks different. If you always go for a walk at 7 o'clock every morning, you're gonna miss what the light does at different times. There's just things that you'll never see. So if you'd like to see some different things and some different ways of looking at them, mix up the time that you go out. Walk after dinner, per se. I know it's getting dark earlier and that gets harder, but these are just some options that if you would really like to, try going outdoors and really looking at different times. And then you don't always have to get out on trails. I do encourage you to familiarize yourself with your local trails. Hopkinton has a wonderful trails club, and they regularly take walks out in Hopkinton trails. That's the best way to learn trails right in this area. But I do have books that can give you suggestions of easy walks in Massachusetts and more easy walks in Massachusetts. And but familiarize yourself with those local trails, because those are going to be wonderful places to go and visit and not just walk on the sidewalk. Sidewalks are wonderful, but it's nice to get out into the woods as well, and it gets quieter on the trails. So familiarize yourself with the trails, but if you are not able to get out on a trail for any reason, there is also wonderful foliage on all of the roads that we live on in New England. This I took a picture of just from a little bridge that's crossing over the Charles River in Millis on Myrtle Street. And I just spotted this birch tree, and I knew that it was the Charles River. I was kind of tracking the Charles as it starts in Hopkinton and goes down through Milford into Bellingham and up Medway and Millis. And so I spotted this in Millis and just parked as safely as I could and went back to the bridge and got this picture. And this was the other side of the bridge. So when you find these rivers, we are so blessed with waterways in this area. We've got the Charles River, we've got the Neponset River, we've got the Blackstone River, we've got the Sudbury River and Assabet and Concord Rivers. A number down south of us, then we've got the 10-Mile River, there's a lot, and the Taunton River. So many, and we're really, really blessed with waterways. And for me, that is just gorgeous foliage, is mixing the water and the sky and the foliage. But go on both sides of the bridge. If you see that you're crossing over a stream or one of the rivers in our area, and just take a look and look downstream and see. It's just wonderful. Now I learn what overlooks are, and we do have some. This is in Northbridge, just over the line from Uxbridge. This is Lookout Rock. We're looking down the Blackstone River Valley, and it was the height of foliage season. You can either park on Hartford Avenue at Rice City Pond in Uxbridge and walk a mile up the east bank of the Blackstone River and scramble up a really steep bank, or you can drive the parallel road that follows the Blackstone River, get onto Quaker Street and go a block or so to the very nice parking lot and walk about a quarter of a mile, very easy walk, and then scramble up this rock. You do have to kind of crab walk to get up on the rock to actually get the view. But you know what? We don't have many views, and when I find a view, I'll scramble. I'll crab walk. I'll get down on my hands and knees to get up onto a rock if I'm going to get a view. And this is one of the really, really lovely ones. This is exactly the same spot on Lookout Rock, but something looks different. Do you notice? What do you see? You can see the river. That's right. Even when the leaves have fallen, there are things to see, and life does not end when the leaves fall. not only does life go on, but you can actually see more from some of these views, and you can actually see the river that you weren't able to see in that last one because we are so heavily forested now that the trees have actually obscured a lot of the views that we used to have. So take heart, even when the foliage is done, there are still things to see in the outdoors and wonderful views to obtain. This is over in Hopkinton. I wanted to make sure you got some fall pictures in Hopkinton, and this is at the state park. And it was as dry a fall last year when I took it as it has been this year until yesterday. And this is a spillway from the dam, from the main area where they do a little bit of swimming, but boating, the boat rental area, kayaking and paddling. This spillway goes to the swimming area, but it was completely dry, and you could see the artistry that was used on this wonderful, wonderful spillway. It's like this gorgeous curved stair step mixed in with the foliage, and I just fell in love with that. You just never know what you're going to find when you go out looking, but just be prepared to be surprised. And then this was also at the swimming beach area at Hopkinton State Park, just glorious, glorious foliage. And sometimes you get lucky and they're all glowing all at once. A lot of times they're not at the same time, and that's part of it. Means you got to go back out and you need to take another walk, and there's nothing bad about that at all. And sometimes you get just some wonderful days, like the blue sky, the foliage, and the pond. This is Louisa Lake over in Milford, just down the road from you here in Hopkinton on the Upper Charles Trail in Milford. You can see this view right from the trail parking at Louisa Lake, just off Dilla Street. That's Route 85. You just keep going from Hopkinton underneath 495, and the next street past 495 is Dilla Street. You hang a right, go 1 mile, and the parking is right there for you. Numerous other places, including right at the Hopkinton town line, that you can access this trail, but this will get you right at the pond where you'll get some nice water views. This is over in Dover, and this was later in the season. What we're looking at is some oaks, and this is Noanette Woodlands. It's a trustees of the reservation property. And you get views of Boston year-round. The foliage doesn't change, it doesn't alter or change the view. Easy walks all through Noanette Woodlands, and it's a little bit of a rooty, rocky climb right where the overlook is, but it's again one of those that are worth the bit of the climb. And what I wanted to show you, what you're looking at here is oaks, and they look okay. And then same day I turned and looked a different direction, and all of a sudden everything glowed. Well, that's because of the difference in the light. Learning which direction your overlooks are, whether they're east facing, you might not want to go there in the morning because your camera is likely to be filled with too much light and wash out. But if it's west facing, maybe afternoon isn't so great because same thing, it will get washed out going that direction. So familiarizing yourself with your trails is also familiarizing yourself not only with the overlooks, but learn what direction they face, so that when you are planning a foliage walk, you can say, well, that's not so good to go first thing in the morning. Let's make that an afternoon walk. You can still go, but you might say, I didn't get a very good picture because it's not a great time. And then this is a view, full sun, midday, from the same Noanette Peak. And you see it's actually much clearer. And that was, the sun wasn't washing it out, it was just directly overhead. That's why I say mix it up, morning, noon, night. You're going to get different light, and you're going to see different things all of those times. And sometimes just right in your own backyard is the best place to look when you've got a grandchild that's ready to jump for joy when she's looking at foliage with her grandma. And this is right on the street where I live at Silver Lake, and it is just lovely, and it's just so exciting, and it's wonderful to introduce foliage and appreciating it with our children. and to understand that it's something we can pass on to them and pass that joy on to them as well. And sometimes, if you're lucky, right in your very own backyard, the deer will even look right at you when you're trying to get a picture with the foliage right behind you. And that's, those are basically the points that I want to make. Sometimes you're just going to be lucky. And it's always go back out. So search out your cemeteries. Familiarize yourself with your local trails. Join your local hiking club trail and support them and go out on walks with them. Walk at different times of day. Learn where your overlooks are and which direction they are. And be prepared to be surprised.